Hey, this is Captain Ross of 3B's Captain School, and this is our assistance towing safety video. Assistance towing. Any applicant that successfully completes this assistance towing course will meet the requirements under 46 CFR 11.482 to add an assistance towing endorsement to any national endorsement as an OUPV or master on vessels of less than 200 tons. To successfully complete this course, students must have full attendance and or complete the online portion and score at least 70% on the final 20-question exam. As a commercial assistance captain, you may be required to tow a disabled vessel to a safe port. This course covers general towing information and procedures, including safety, forces in towing, equipment, and precautions, but is in no way all-inclusive. We use the Boat Crew Seamanship Manual and our 3B's Captain School Assistance Towing textbook for references in this course. We're going to cover towing safety, towing forces, towing equipment, towing procedures, and towing precautions. Towing safety. All right, safely towing a disabled vessel to port requires constant attention, planning, training, and proper equipment. Every towing activity exposes a towing and disabled vessel's crews to hazards and can be potentially dangerous. Crew safety should always be the top priority. Remember, safety first. Towing safety. It's critical for captains to conduct a thorough risk assessment before launching or diverting for any assistance towing job. Risk assessment is a process of identifying, analyzing, and evaluating potential risks that may impede safely achieving objectives. Every member of your team is responsible for identifying and managing risks throughout the towing evolution. Mishaps can be prevented by honestly evaluating risks involved in every step of the towing evolution. So we want to, from this, we want to take the importance of risk assessment. The process, we talked about identifying, analyzing, and evaluating potential risks. So this process, it doesn't have to be super long or complicated. But you definitely, before taking on any towing job, want to spend at least a few minutes with your crew. If you're by yourself on an assistance boat, you want to, talk to someone else, your boss or another captain, and just kind of go over, here's the tow, here's the vessel's location, this is the situation they have, this is why they're disabled. Really kind of evaluate, identify the risks, kind of analyze each one, and then evaluate to make sure that you're the right person to tow, you have enough crew or the correct crew, you have the correct equipment. So risk assessment is critical to doing a safe tow. So a quick warning, do not let a perceived need to engage in a towing evolution override a complete, honest risk assessment process that emphasizes personal safety. Again, we want to make sure everybody's safe both on your boat and the disabled vessel. Situational awareness is the ability to identify, process, and comprehend the critical elements of information about what is happening to the team with regard to the current evolution. So situational awareness and that definition are kind of a complicated way of saying you got to pay attention the whole time you're on one of these evolutions. You need to pay attention to the environment, the weather, your vessel, the crew, the disabled vessel, their current condition, if their condition is getting worse or better, all the way out through the whole evolution, from the time you leave the dock to pick somebody up until the time you bring them safely back to the dock. Towing evolutions are extremely dynamic with changing weather, sea, and vessel conditions, and it is imperative that all crew stay fully aware of the situation from the initial call until the disabled vessel is safely docked. As the captain, you should reinforce situational awareness through constant communication with your crew and the disabled vessel's crew. So throughout this course, when you see the term or the abbreviation DV like this, I just kind of circle it with my cursor there. That's disabled vessel, it's short for disabled vessel. So what this is saying basically is the way you keep situational awareness, or one of the ways, is to have constant communication throughout the whole towing evolution. So if you have crew on board, as you're driving in, hey, how's the vessel look? Have them on tow watch. How's the vessel look? How's that line riding? Is the line dipped enough? Does it look like it's pulling on their boat too hard? Do you see any chafing happening? You just keep a constant communication, and it keeps you and your crew in the moment paying attention to the evolution. Risk assessment. So there's several risk assessment tools that you can use to assess the risks involved in a towing evolution. In this course, we're going to use a 7-step risk management process. But like I said, if you want to use a different one, there's plenty of them. You can Google and find a number of different risk management or risk assessment processes. So in this one, what we want to do is take the 7 steps here. We want to identify the mission tasks. So what is the job? Identify the hazards, assess the risks, identify options, evaluate risk versus gain, execute a decision, and then monitor throughout. Identify the mission and the tasks involved in this mission. So the first thing I want to do is, I'm going to use the term mission here, but we want to define the job. I have a, let's say, 24-foot C Pro center console, 2 persons on board. It's disabled. I have the position. They're about 22 miles away from where I'm at. And the scenario in the textbook you see is from Ocean City Inlet. Currently we have 2-foot seas with a northeast wind at 5 knots, temperature 68 degrees. Both persons on the disabled vessel wearing life jackets and have no medical issues. And this is all information I've got from talking to them on the radio and asking them these questions. The vessel is apparently out of gas with neither outboard working. We've been contacted to this vessel to the commercial fishing harbor in Ocean City. So I've identified right there what we're supposed to do, what the job is. So let's identify some hazards that may be present. So one of the things that we want to do for identifying hazards is we want to evaluate hazards by looking at the equipment, environment, and personnel. So let's start with equipment. Our boat, tow lines, tow attachments, bridles, pennants, shackles. For this size vessel, 24-foot C Pro center console, do we have the right gear on board to safely tow this vessel back? The environment, so I said it was 2-foot seas with a northeast wind. That's the current weather. What's the predicted weather? And what I like to do is look at what the weather is predicted to be for the entire time I estimate it's going to take me to finish this tow, from me leaving the dock to getting on scene, hooking them up in stern tow, towing them back in, getting them inside tow, and safely mooring them up, and then add about 12 hours. So I want to cover a pretty long time frame with the predicted weather, so I have a good idea if the seas are going to get better, or the weather is going to get better, the ocean conditions are going to get better or worse. So I've evaluated the hazards now based on equipment and environment, and then next, personnel. So I'm a qualified captain, got experience on the boat. I have a mate working with me. He has experience. I feel pretty comfortable. Or we both have experience, but we've both been up for 20 hours because we just finished a couple other tows. I'm feeling pretty fatigued. I'm not sure if I have the endurance to safely do this tow. Or I'm experienced, my mate's not experienced, or the mate's experienced and I'm not experienced. You want to evaluate personnel based on experience, training, fatigue, etc. So ID hazards: equipment, environment, personnel. Next, we want to assess the risks. So we've identified hazards, and now we're going to discuss the risks that are involved with those hazards. So one of the things that I like to think about when I'm assessing risk is, risk, I've heard it defined before, is the amount of time exposed to a hazard. So I'm going to check these hazards that I've identified in the last step, and then, am I going to spend a lot of, if the seas are really big, I'm going to be out in the seas for a long time, so that increases the risk of the whole job because, I'm going to be out in rough weather for a long amount of time. That tow we were just talking about, let's say during the tow, the tide is going to switch from a flood, which it is when I leave, to an ebb. And going out an inlet, an ebb tide tends to make the seas get steeper and larger. So that's a consideration. I want to make sure, let's say when I was identifying my equipment, this is a 24-foot boat. I'm potentially going to tow them with a skiff hook and the trailer eye bolt. So I want to make sure my skiff hook equipment is solid, and then if it's not, or I need to have another option, I need to make sure I have a bridle on board that fits the cleats, because it's a smaller boat. A lot of bridles have bigger eyes on them and don't necessarily fit the cleats very well. So these are some hazards identified, and these are risks, and I want to make sure I address them in this section. All right, next is identify options. Maybe I have a different boat to use. Tell our company they need to call in somebody else. If I don't have the proper tow line or skiff hook or something on board, maybe I need to grab another one from another boat. I'm going to take these as options to minimize the risks. Next, I'm going to evaluate risk versus gain. So I've got a little chart here. Green there is low risk, yellow medium risk, and red is the high risk. But let's look at low risk, high gain up in the upper left-hand corner. Obviously, accept the mission, continue to monitor risk factors. If the conditions or mission changes, I might have to put it in one of these other categories. So what's high gain? So 2 people on a 24-foot boat disabled 22 miles off Ocean City, that's a pretty high gain evolution. I'm going to go out there and they can't stay out there forever. They can't stay out there for even a couple days. So that's a high gain. Let's say I have medium risk and it's low gain. So what would be a low gain? We look at the middle row all the way on the right column. You'll see accept mission, continue to monitor risk factors, actively pursue. Medium risk, the weather's a little bit worse and there's nobody on the boat. It's just the boat I'm getting. So I'm not trying to save someone's life, but a 24-foot Sea Pro with twin outboards can be a pretty expensive boat. The gain isn't going to be as high as it would if I was rescuing people, but it's still a considerable gain. Now I'm in the high risk. So I want to make sure high risk, high gain, accept the mission. So we've got the weather's much worse. Let's say it's 6-foot seas, potential breaking seas in the inlet when I come back in because the tide's going to be ebbing. But there's 2 people on the boat. They can't stay out there. Obviously they can't stay out there very long, especially in this kind of sea conditions, or it's really cold. That's a better example probably. Let's say it's really cold with a little bit of seas. I'm accept the mission, but I have to communicate with someone else. In this graph we say, or chart we say command, but your boss at work there. And then pay better attention and actively look for different options as you're going through the entire tow job. If it's high risk and low gain, so let's say it's a 1990 Sea Pro with 2 broken outboards and nobody on board, and it's 6-foot seas and 22 degrees outside, you're not going to accept that. And these are all going to happen. You're going to decide this risk gain model by talking to your crew and or your boss. So that's risk versus gain. So finally, you don't want to ever accept high risk for low gain. Never accept high risk for low gain. Never accept high risk for low gain. All right, now we've got execute decision. So we've identified our mission, we've identified our hazards, we've assessed the risks, we've identified the options, we've evaluated risk versus gain, we decided we're going to go. So now we're going to execute that decision. Next, we're going to monitor the situation all the way throughout. I'm going to monitor the weather, I'm going to monitor the tow, I'm going to monitor the disabled vessel's condition, I'm going to monitor the people in the disabled vessel's condition throughout the entire evolution. So we'll finish the towing safety with do not let a perceived need to engage in a towing evolution override a complete, honest risk assessment process that emphasizes personal safety. Remember, it doesn't have to be long and complicated. You just need to at least have that discussion and have some process for identifying the risk. All right, that concludes our assistance towing safety video. Please check our YouTube channel for other videos on assistance towing safety, OUPV, and Masters Upgrade.